Elise Hart had crossed 2 states to marry a man who never came. Before she had been in Mercy Ford 10 minutes, Silas Vale accused her of stealing a dipper of public water she was giving to a fainting woman. He ordered Deputy Jonah Cross to march her across the depot in front of the whole town, and by sundown, Elise would either marry Silas's cousin or stay locked up until the circuit judge came next week. Jonah put his hand on the complaint. Then, instead of closing the cell door, he left it open. Elise did not know yet that he would arrest her 4 times, or that the 4th arrest would be the one Silas could not survive. The morning train had just coughed black smoke over Mercy Ford, and the platform still shook under the boots of passengers looking for trunks, tickets, and shade. Her traveling dress was gray from rail dust. Her bonnet ribbon had come loose. Her carpetbag sat by her boot with a paper tag that said she had come west to marry a man who had not come to meet her. The woman beside her was older, red-faced from the heat, and shaking too badly to hold the dipper herself. "Set that down," Jonah said. His voice was not loud, but the badge on his vest made people stop looking away. He was tall, sun-browned, and built more like a trail hand than a town officer. Dust marked the knees of his trousers. A rawhide loop hung from his belt beside his revolver. His gray hat shaded eyes that did not look cruel, only troubled. Elise lowered the dipper, but she did not drop it. "She needed water," Elise said. Behind Jonah, Silas Vale came down the depot steps with a folded complaint in his hand. He wore a black town coat too fine for the heat and a cattle association pin at his lapel. His mustache was trimmed so sharp it looked mean before his mouth even opened. "That barrel belongs to the association freight office," Silas said. "She has no ticket for this stop, no husband present, and no right to take from it." The older woman whispered, "I told her to." Silas did not look at her. "Deputy, you heard me." Jonah took the paper. His jaw tightened as he read. Across the street, the low adobe jail faced the depot like the town had been built to move people from one door to the other. Between those doors, a handful of cattle hands, 2 matrons, a baggage boy, and me Tolliver, the stage driver, watched the thing happen and did nothing. Elise looked at me. They had shared a bench on the last leg from Las Vegas Junction. Me had heard Elise explain she had come as a bride, had found no groom, and had only enough coin left to buy 1 meal if she was careful. Me's face hardened with shame, but she turned toward her team and checked a harness that did not need checking. Jonah folded the complaint once. "Elise Hart," he said, and the sound of her name in his mouth made the platform go still. "I have to take you in on a charge of theft from association property." Her cheeks burned, "for a dipper of water." The baggage boy stopped calling trunk numbers. One of the matrons looked at Elise's unclaimed carpetbag, then moved her skirt clear of Elise's path. Silas wanted the walk to feel like a verdict before any cell door closed. "For a complaint signed by the freight clerk." He looked toward Silas, then back to her. "Walk with me, keep your bag." "Am I to run?" she asked. "No," Jonah said, "but I want both your hands where every fool in this street can see they are steady." That was the first kind thing he did for her, though it did not feel kind until later. He did not touch her. He did not seize her elbow. He did not let Silas take her carpetbag. He walked beside her across the street while the town stared as if Elise had stolen a horse, a purse, and the roof off the depot all at once. Inside the jail, the air smelled of limewash, iron, and old coffee. Jonah opened the first cell, then stopped with his hand on the door. "Step in," he said. Elise did. Her knees wanted to fold, but she would not give Silas Vale the pleasure of seeing it through the front window. Jonah shut the outer door. The latch clicked. Then he opened the inner bar and left it standing wide. Elise stared at it. "Is that a mistake?" she asked. "No." "Then I am not arrested." "You are arrested." He took a receipt book from his desk and tore one slip in half with careful hands. "But I have a complaint to verify, and until I do, you are not a dog in a box." He wrote her name on one half, then the charge, then the time. He wrote the same on the other half and handed one piece through the bars. "Keep that," he said. "If anyone says you were taken before 9:30, you show it." "Why would anyone say that?" Jonah's eyes lifted to hers. For the first time, she noticed how tired they were, not weak, tired from seeing laws twisted by men who liked the sound of keys. "Because men who use paper to hurt women usually need the paper to lie twice. Elise closed her fingers around the receipt. Silas entered without knocking. Why is that door open? Jonah slid the receipt book shut, because she is not convicted. She is a vagrant bride who arrived under debt. Elise stepped to the bars. I arrived under a letter, no debt was shown to me. Silas smiled. You ate on credit from Las Vegas Junction to here. You rode under the name of a groom who refused delivery. You owe passage, meals, and handling. Handling, Jonah said. The word came out low enough that Silas finally looked at him with caution. Legal term, Silas said. Not one I like. Silas tapped the complaint against his palm. Her intended husband withdrew. My cousin Asa is prepared to take responsibility for her debt if she signs before the preacher by sundown. Otherwise, she can sit in your open cell until the judge comes through next week. Elise felt the floor tilt. A cousin, a debt, a preacher. It had all been waiting before she stepped off the train. Elise's fingers tightened around her carpetbag handle. Thomas Bell's letter carried preacher Asa Bell's small church mark on the back. She had never shown that letter to Silas Vale. Jonah looked at her, not at Silas. Did you agree to marry Asa Bell? No. Did you agree to have Silas Vale arrange your debt? No. Then I have what I need for now. Silas's smile thinned. You are making yourself memorable, deputy. I have been called worse. Silas left, but his shadow seemed to stay in the room. Elise waited until the door closed. Why are you helping me? Jonah set the pen down. I arrested you. You left the door open. That is not the same as helping. It is to a woman who expected iron. He looked at the dipper still in her hand. She had carried it all the way without knowing. The older woman's water clung to its rim. You gave water before you drank, he said. That is not how thieves begin. Jonah took his hat from the desk. Stay where you can see the street. If Silas comes back before I do not sign anything. If anyone asks why the door is open, tell them Deputy Cross knows how a latch works. That almost made Elise smile. Almost. He returned within the hour with dust on his boots and anger held tight behind his teeth. The barrel is public on train mornings, he said. Association fills it because the town pays them $3 a month. So I stole from the town. No, you helped a passenger drink town water. Jonah unlocked the outer door. You are released. Elise did not move. Released to what? Elise asked. One clean room over Widow Crane's wash house, Jonah said. I will lend you the cost, write it plain, and leave stage fare beside the key. You choose what happens next. He wrote released, complaint unfounded, 1041. Then he carried the dipper back across the street and placed it in the older woman's shaking hands while Silas watched. One lie takes more than one truth to kill, he said. Elise tucked the receipts inside her dress. Thank you, Deputy Cross. Jonah, if you want. Elise, if you want. If you want to see whether Elise clears her name before Silas closes the next trap, subscribe and ride with us. The second arrest came that night, under the curfew bell. Elise had taken the room over Widow Crane's wash house. Jonah had left the loan written on the sill with the room key and a folded stage fare beside it. The fare was not hidden. It lay in plain sight, as if he wanted even the walls to know she could leave. That small mercy frightened her more than Silas had. A man who tried to own a woman hid the road. Jonah Cross had laid it in front of her. Near dusk, Elise saw Me Tolliver's leather root book lying in the washhouse yard. Me had been there to speak with Widow Crane and had left in a hurry when one of Silas's cattle hands passed by. The book held route stamps, freight pledges, and license marks. Losing it could cost a stage driver her work. Elise carried it toward the depot. The curfew bell began while she crossed the main street. Mercy Ford's curfew was meant for drunken drovers and stray cattle crews, but Silas Vale stepped from the freight office as if he had been waiting for the first stroke. There she is, he called. Jonah came from the jail porch. Elise lifted the book. Me dropped this. Me stood beside her stage, white around the mouth. Is that yours? Jonah asked her. Me opened her lips. Silas looked at her. She shut them again. Curfew violation, Silas said. A woman under vagrancy review wandering after bell with freight documents in hand. Elise turned toward me. Tell him. Me's fingers twisted in her skirt. Jonah looked from the book to the bell rope still swinging at the church. The bell is not finished. Silas held out another complaint, filed at 6:50. The final bell stroke sounded. Elise saw Jonah read the paper. His face went still. Elise Hart, he said, and pain moved under the words, I have to take you in. She laughed once because if she did not, she would cry. Again. Again. This time the street watched harder. A woman who was arrested once might be unlucky. A woman arrested twice became a story people could enjoy. Jonah walked beside her as before, no hand on her arm, no claim. But halfway across the street when a cattle hand muttered, Bride jail suits her, Jonah stopped. Say it again, he said. The man looked at Jonah's badge and swallowed the second insult. Elise should not have felt warmed by that. She did anyway. In the jail, Jonah shut the outer cell door and left the inner latch open again. You should lock it, Elise said. Do you plan to run? No. Then I would be locking it for Silas. He took her first receipt from the desk, laid the new complaint beside it, and frowned. Elise came closer. What is it? This says the complaint was filed at 6:50. The bell rang at 7. Yes. Maybe Silas expected me to break curfew. Men like Silas expect a great many things. The law does not usually let them write those expectations down before they happen. He realized how close she stood and stepped back. Not fast, not like he feared her, like he respected the space between them too much to steal even an inch. That restraint made her brave. Why do you carry a badge if men like him can put paper in your hand and make you use it? She asked. Jonah looked toward the dark window. Outside, Silas's office lamp burned yellow. Because once in a while, he said, a paper has to pass through an honest hand before it can be shown for what it is. And are your hands honest? He looked down at them. They are trying to be. The answer was not proud. That was why she believed it. Sheriff Amos Pell came in near 8 o'clock. He was a broad man with a silver beard and election posters still pasted in the office window. He looked at Elise as if he would rather she had been a sack of beans than a woman with eyes. Jonah, he said, folks are saying you are making a bride case personal. Folks are being fed. Pell looked at the open latch. Then why is she not locked? Because the curfew complaint was filed before curfew. Clerk may have guessed. Clerks do not get to guess crimes. Pell's jaw moved. Careful. Jonah did not step back. I am. Elise watched the two men and understood the cost more plainly. Jonah's badge was not armor. It was a thin piece of metal pinned over a living man's heart. Pell released her that night, but not kindly. He warned her not to cause more confusion. He warned Jonah not to confuse mercy with law. One more signed complaint, Pell said, loud enough for the people outside to hear, and I hold you until the circuit judge arrives next week, open latch or no open latch. Through the window, Silas tapped 2 fingers against his complaint book. When Elise returned to the washhouse room, the folded stage fare still sat on the sill. She did not touch it. The third arrest came 2 days later, when Silas stole her mare with a paper that said the mare had been stolen by Elise. The animal was not worth much to anyone else. Her name was Penny, and she had a white blaze shaped like a bent candle. Elise had bought her with 3 years of sewing money before she ever answered the marriage letter that brought her west. Penny was the last proof that Elise had once belonged to herself. Silas's men took the mare from Widow Crane's back lot before breakfast. Elise ran after them with her hair coming loose, and Jonah already crossing from the jail because he had heard Penny scream. That is my mare, Elise said. Silas turned from the saddle. Bill of sale says otherwise. Jonah reached for the paper. Let me see. Happy to, Silas handed it over. Filed this morning. Mare reported stolen from association stock pen. Witness says Miss Hart had possession. I had possession because she is mine. Then you can prove it to the circuit judge, Silas said. Until then, possession of stolen stock is arrestable. Jonah read the paper. Elise saw the moment the trap closed. If he refused, Silas would say Jonah protected a horse thief. If he obeyed, the town would have its third story. No, Elise whispered. Jonah's face was pale under the sun. Elise Hart, he said, I have to take you in on complaint of stolen stock. The cattle hands laughed. Elise turned on them. You can laugh when a man steals from a woman because paper makes it easy. One of them looked away. One matron moved away as Elise passed. The baggage boy who had called her Miss that morning stared at the dust. By the third walk, Silas was not only taking her freedom, he was teaching the town what name to use for her. Silas did not. Best watch that temper, Asab prefers a quiet wife. Jonah moved so quickly that the space between him and Silas disappeared. You will not speak of her as any man's wife. Silas looked at Jonah's badge. You may want to polish that while it is still yours. The third walk to the jail was the hardest, not because the street was longer, because Elise knew by then that Jonah hated every step and took them anyway so Silas could not send a rougher hand. Inside, Jonah did not lead her to the cell. He set his badge on the desk. Elise stared at it. What are you doing? Taking myself out of Silas's hand. He will use that against you. He already is. Sheriff Pell arrived before Jonah could write the receipt. Silas came with him. Deputy Cross, Pell said heavily, until I can sort this matter, you are relieved of duty. The room seemed to shrink. Jonah nodded once, then sorted fast. Pell's eyes flickered to Elise. Miss Hart, you will remain in custody. On a paper filed this morning by the man who stole my mare. Pell's face reddened. Mind your tone. Elise reached into her dress and pulled out the first 2 receipts. Her hands shook, but she made herself hold them where Pell could see. The first complaint was false. The second was written before the bell. If this third one smells the same, maybe it is not my tone that wants minding. For one breath, nobody spoke. Then Silas laughed. She learns law quick for a woman who came as freight. Jonah picked up his badge from the desk and held it out to Pell. Take it, Jonah said, or back me. Pell took it. That hurt Elise more than she expected. The badge left Jonah's hand, and with it went the one official shield he had held between her and Silas. Silas smiled as if he had just bought the room. Pell set the badge in his drawer. Jonah, go home. I live in the bunk behind this jail. Then go stand somewhere else. Jonah looked at Elise. The look held apology, anger, and something warmer that neither of them could afford to name. There is still a stage east at noon, he said. He took the folded fare from his pocket. You can take it. This is yours to use, not mine to offer twice. Silas snorted. She leaves, she admits debt. She leaves, Jonah said. She breathes. Elise looked at the ticket. Safety lay in Jonah's palm. It had a route stamp and a seat number. It could carry her away from Mercy Ford, from Sela's Vale, from the cell whose latch had become a strange kind of promise. It could also leave Jonah stripped of his badge because he had believed her. She did not take it. No, she said. Jonah's eyes changed. Elise. No, I ran west because a letter promised a life. I will not run east because a liar promised a cage. Silas's smile faded. Pell muttered, fool woman. Elise faced him. Maybe, but I am a free fool unless one of your papers can prove different. Jonah gave a low breath that might have been a laugh if there had been room for laughter. Pell put her in the cell that morning. He locked the outer door. The inner latch stayed open because Jonah, though stripped of his badge, stood in the doorway until Pell lost patience and left it so. By noon, Elise had decided the 4th arrest would happen because she would make it happen. Before that decision settled into courage, it had to pass through fear. The jail grew hot after Pell left. Flies worried the window screen. A cattle hand crossed the street once just to look in and grin at her. On his second pass, the cattle hand pointed toward the church, then toward Elise's cell. Asa or the judge, he mouthed through the screen before walking away. Widow Crane came with coffee and bread, but Pell would not let her through the door. He took the plate himself and set it on Jonah's desk, as if kindness might become evidence if it touched Elise directly. Elise watched the coffee cool. Before you eat, Jonah said from the yard, tell me the name on the marriage letter. Thomas Bell. His hand stopped over the bread plate. Asa Bell's nephew, dead 2 months. Elise looked at the cell, then toward Silas's office. Then I was never expected to be a bride. No, Jonah said, you were expected to arrive alone. He was not allowed inside. Pell had been plain about that. Jonah stood under the back awning where anyone could see him, and no one could accuse him of whispering secrets to her. The badge-shaped pale spot on his vest looked worse than the badge itself. She took the bread because refusing would make the day belong more to Silas than to herself. The first bite almost broke her. It was plain bread, a little dry, but it reminded her of the kitchen she had left behind in Missouri. Jonah saw her face change and looked away to spare her. That made her throat ache worse. That was worse somehow. A rejected bride could mourn the rejection. A woman lured by a dead man's name had been measured like freight before she ever packed a bag. Elise set the bread down and wiped her fingers on her skirt. Jonah. He looked at her. If I leave on that stage, Silas can do this again. Yes. If I stay, he may win. Yes. She almost smiled. You are supposed to lie and tell me he will not. I have no wish to be the second man in Mercy Ford building cages out of lies. The fear did not leave. It changed shape. It stood beside her instead of over her. That was when she began to think of the 4th arrest, not as something Silas would do to her, but as a door she might make him open in front of everyone. The chance came through Me Tolliver. Me appeared at the jail's back window just after dinner, her sleeves scorched and her face streaked with soot. Jonah was in the yard splitting kindling with angry, useless strokes. He dropped the hatchet when he saw her. Silas burned my root book, Me said. Elise came to the bars, the one I carried. Me nodded. Not all. I pulled half away. He said if I spoke for you, I would lose the South Road license. Said a woman driver can be replaced by any boy with 2 hands. Why come now? Elise asked. Me's eyes filled, but tears did not fall. Because you carried my book when I would not carry your truth. Jonah came close. What do you know? Me took a scorched strip of leather from inside her vest. Several papers were folded beneath it. Silas writes the charge before he sends men to make it happen. I saw him do it with the curfew. Saw him do it with the mayor. He keeps a docket copy at the courthouse, then has the complaint walked over after the fact. Elise gripped the bars. Can you swear it? Me looked at Jonah, then at Elise. If I swear it, I lose my root. You may, Jonah said. And if I do not? Elise answered before Jonah could. Then Silas keeps mine. Me closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked older and better at once. Then I will lose a road before I watch him build one more cage. The words cost her. Elise saw it in the way Me's shoulders dropped, as if the South Road license had already been pulled from her coat. On that road, Me carried medicine, letters, payroll envelopes, and sometimes women who needed a driver who did not ask cruel questions. Losing it meant losing money, yes, but also losing the one piece of authority she had carved from a country that preferred men on wagon seats. Silas knew you would fear that, Elise said. Me nodded. He knows every hunger in this town. Mine was the road, Pell's his votes, Asaz's his respectability, Jonah's was his badge. Was, Jonah asked. Me looked at him through the bars. If it still was, you would not be standing in dust without it. Jonah did not answer. Elise looked at the scorched root book. The edges of the pages were black, but 3-time stamps remained clear. 9:20, 6:50, dawn, times written in the same narrow hand, each before Elise had supposedly committed the sin named beside it. Me laid the scorched strip beside Jonah's receipts. The 6:50 and 9:20 figures leaned at the same angle, each with the same broken tail on the number 2. Jonah did not explain the pattern. He turned the pages so Elise could watch the lie repeat itself. This still may not convince Pell, Jonah said. It does not have to convince him first, Elise said. It has to frighten Silas. Me studied her. How? Elise touched the bars. A man who writes charges early believes the rest of us are late. Let him see me carrying the receipts. Let him think I mean to run with them. He will write before he thinks. Jonah's expression hardened. That is exactly what I do not like. Because it might work. Because it puts his temper on you. His temper is already on me. I would rather have it where people can see. Me gave a small, grim nod. She is right. Jonah looked at the stage driver, as if betrayal had changed sides too quickly for comfort. Do not help her frighten herself into bravery, he said. Elise stepped close enough that only iron separated them. I am already frightened. Bravery is deciding who gets to use it. The yard behind the jail went silent, except for Penny calling once from the association pen. Elise heard the mare and felt the decision move all the way through her. Silas had taken her name, then her room in the town's eyes, then her mare, then Jonah's badge. He would not take the next step from her. Jonah unfolded the burned papers. This is not enough by itself. No, Elise said. Both of them looked at her. Elise reached into her dress and took out the 2 receipts Jonah had written. Then she looked at the locked drawer where Pell had put the badge and the complaint copies. Silas needs me charged again, she said. He needs me made into the kind of woman a sack can rescue by marrying. Me said, Silas told Pell he wants the bride matter settled before the noon train. If Elise is still a prisoner, a sack can call marriage the only release. Elise looked at the receipts. Then he has to write the 4th charge before 10. Jonah stepped close enough that the bars stood between them like the rule he was trying not to break. I will not use you as bait. Then stand aside while I use myself. His face tightened. That is not better. It is mine. Those 3 words stopped him. The jail yard grew quiet. Somewhere at the depot, a horse blew through its nose. Me wiped soot from her sleeve and did not speak. Jonah looked at Elise as if he had first seen her at the water barrel, and was still trying to understand how a woman with so little could keep giving pieces of herself to other people. If you walk into this, he said, Silas may put you behind a locked door I cannot open. Then bring witnesses. If Pell sides with him, then make Pell choose in front of people whose votes he still wants. Jonah's mouth curved without humor. You are learning Mercy Ford law. No, Elise said. I am learning Mercy Ford men. After the 3rd arrest, when the jail went quiet and the day held its breath, remember to subscribe for more clean Western romance where courage, choice, and frontier justice ride together. That evening, Jonah gave Elise his spare tan coat through the bars. It was too broad in the shoulders and smelled faintly of horse, sun, and wood smoke. Why, she asked. Because Silas expects you to look beaten. And your coat changes that. It tells him you are not standing alone. Elise held the coat against her. That sounds like a claim. Jonah's eyes did not move from hers. Then I said it wrong. It tells him I am standing where I choose. You can hand it back whenever you choose. She put it on. His throat moved. Elise, he said softly, when this is done, if you still want the eastbound road, I will put you on it myself. And if I do not? The question hung between them, warmer than it should have been in a jailhouse. Jonah looked at the open inner latch. Then I will ask one question at a time. She wanted to ask what question came first. She did not. At 10 the next morning, Mercy Ford gathered in the courthouse yard, because Me Tolliver had made sure it would. She told the depot agent she was surrendering one route before noon. She told Widow Crane that Silas had burned her book. She told Preacher Asabel that if he had agreed to marry a woman under debt, he should bring his Bible and hear what kind of debt it was. By the time Elise stepped from the jail in Jonah's tan coat, half the right people were pretending not to be curious near the courthouse steps. Widow Crane came too, carrying the cold coffee Pell had never let Elise drink. She did not bring it to Elise. She set it on the courthouse rail in front of Sheriff Pell. That was hers, Widow Crane said. You let it sit. Pell's beard twitched. This is not your matter. A rooming woman knows when a town starts locking women instead of renting to them. Widow Crane folded her hands. It becomes everybody's matter faster than men expect. The depot agent hovered near his baggage cart, nervous eyes moving between Silas's office and the jail. Asab Bell stood with his Bible tucked under one arm and his collar buttoned crooked. He had the look of a man who had slept badly and blamed everyone else for the pillow. Two cattle hands leaned against the hitch rail. They were Silas's men, but their laughter from the day before had thinned. One of them kept glancing toward Penny in the association pen. The mare had been tied with a short rope, and every time she tossed her head the rope snapped tight. Elise saw Jonah see it. He did not move toward the pen. Not yet. If he acted too soon, Silas would call it theft, and the fourth arrest would become Jonah's instead of hers. That was the hardest part of the morning, learning that patience could be action when the wrong move fed the wrong man. Jonah stood without his badge. That should have made him look smaller. It did not. Silas came from the clerk's office with Sheriff Pell at his side and two cattle hands behind him. He carried a paper with a red ribbon through it. "There," Silas said. "Breaking custody. I warned you, Sheriff. She leaves the jail while under review, wearing stolen property from a suspended deputy." Elise kept walking until she stood in the center of the yard. Jonah moved beside her. "Whose property?" "Yours," Silas said. "I lent the coat." "Aiding escape." Pell looked pained. "Jonah, do not make this worse." Silas thrust the paper at him. "Arrest her." Jonah did not reach for it. "You stripped my badge, and I can recommend it never come back." "Then you arrest her." Silas's eyes flashed. He turned to Pell. "Sheriff." Pell took the paper. He read it once, then again. "Elise Hart," Pell said. "You are charged with breaking jail custody and conspiracy to defraud the Cattle Association." The words hit the yard like a thrown pan. Jonah held out his hand. "Give me the paper." Pell hesitated. "If I am still the man you expect to do your dirty walking," Jonah said, "give me the paper." Pell handed it over. Jonah read it, then he looked at Elise. There was apology in his face again, but this time there was something else too. "Trust. Elise Hart," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "For the fourth time I am placing you under arrest." A murmur passed through the yard. Elise lifted her chin. "On what time?" Silas blinked. Jonah looked at the complaint, filed at 9:20 this morning. Me stepped forward. She was locked in the cell at 9:20. The baggage boy lifted his head. "I carried bread past the cell at 9:25. She was behind the bars." One matron stepped away from Silas. The other followed. Silas snapped, "You were not asked." Elise pulled the first two receipts from Jonah's coat pocket. She had put them there so every eye could see her reach openly. "First arrest," she said, holding up the slip. "Complaint said I stole water. Deputy Cross released me when the depot barrel proved public." She lifted the second. "Second arrest. Complaint filed before the curfew bell finished." Jonah took the third paper from his own pocket. "Third arrest. Mare reported stolen from the association pen before any association man had touched her bill tag." Pell's face darkened. "Silas." Silas laughed, but it came too sharp. "Receipts from a suspended deputy and a frightened bride. That is your proof." "No," Elise said. "You are." The yard went quiet. Silas looked at her. Elise felt fear climb her spine. She let it climb. She let it stand behind her. Then she spoke. "You told Deputy Cross I owed a bride debt. You told me Asab Bell could take responsibility. You told Sheriff Pell I was under review, but I never showed you the marriage letter. Your agency packet was in my carpet bag, locked in Jonah Cross's desk after the first arrest." Jonah's eyes sharpened. He had not known she would take that path. Silas saw it too late. Elise stepped closer. "So how did you know the letter carried Asab Bell's church seal on the back unless you arranged the debt before I arrived?" Jonah opened the desk, removed Elise's marriage letter, and handed it to Asab Bell. Asab studied the mark on the back, then held it where Pell could see. "That is not my church seal," Asab said. Silas turned on him. "Hold your tongue." Me stepped forward, shaking but loud. "He showed me the complaint before the bell rang. He told me to keep my mouth shut or lose the South Road. He burned my book last night when I would not promise silence." "Liar," Silas said. Me unpinned the small brass root badge from her coat. Her hand trembled as she held it out to Sheriff Pell. "Then take one root for my silence," she said. but take his book for what he did with it. Silas lunged for the warrant book under Pell's arm. Jonah moved first. He caught Silas's wrist, but he did not draw a weapon. He twisted just enough to stop him and let every witness see Silas fighting for the book. "There," Jonah said, "that is the hand that wants the law." Silas's cattle hands shifted. One stepped back, then the other. Pell stared at the pulled warrant book, at Me's badge, at Elise's receipts, at Asab Bell's stunned face. "Silas Vale," Pell said, and his voice had lost its election softness. "Give me the clerk's seal." Silas froze. "Sheriff, you cannot." "I can remove a clerk pending inquiry." "On the word of a vagrant." Elise stepped into the space between them. "On the word of the woman you arrested 4 times before lunch knew what truth was." Pell held out his hand. The yard did not breathe. Silas looked around for obedience. He found none. The depot agent stared at the ground. The cattle hands would not meet his eyes. Me stood with her root badge gone and her back straight. Asab Bell had moved away as if Silas carried sickness. At last, Silas took the small metal seal from his coat. Pell did not let him place it gently on the desk. He took it from Silas's fingers in front of everyone. "The warrant book too," Pell said. Silas's mouth opened. Jonah's grip tightened once. "Silas, let the book go." Pell removed the clerk office key from Silas's ring and handed it to the depot agent. "Until the association sends another clerk, that door answers to the sheriff, not to Vale." Silas looked toward his cattle hands. Neither man stepped forward to defend him. Pell turned to the depot agent. "Return Miss Hart's mare." The agent nodded fast. "Yes, Sheriff." "And the bride debt." Pell looked at Isabel. The preacher lifted both hands. "I will not marry any woman under a paper I did not seal." Elise felt the words move through the yard and break something she had not known was still wrapped around her ribs. Not free because a man loved her. Free before he asked. That was the difference. Silas tried one last time. "You will regret this, all of you. The association owns half the freight through this town." Jonah released his wrist, "Not the women." Silas spat at the dust near Jonah's boot. "You think that line makes you righteous?" "No," Jonah said, "it makes the rest simple." Silas turned to the cattle hands. "Harmon, Lute, bring the mare. We will see how brave this town feels when freight stops moving." Neither man moved. Silas's face changed then. Not fear yet, something closer to disbelief. Men like him did not feel the floor drop all at once. They tested each plank with their boot and hated the world for letting it give. "I pay you," Silas said. Harmon, the older of the two, took off his hat. "Association pays through the office. Office just got took." "I said bring the mare." Lute looked at Elise, then at the short rope holding Penny. "She bit me when I tied her." Despite everything, a laugh moved through the yard. Small, startled, quickly swallowed, it was not enough to heal anything. It was enough to show that Silas no longer owned every mouth. Silas lunged toward the pen himself. Elise moved first. She did not run to the mare. She ran to the courthouse rail and snatched up the red ribbon complaint he had dropped. Then she held it high. "If that mare is stolen," she called, "then say who owned her before me." Silas stopped. "Say it," Elise demanded. His mouth worked. The depot agent spoke without looking up. "Bill tag says association pen." Elise kept the paper raised. "And who signed the bill tag?" No one answered. Jonah did, Silas Vale. Pell turned the warrant book open on his arm and found the matching line. His face went dark in a way no election poster could soften. "You signed complaint and stock claim both." Silas's last defense had been force. Elise had made it speak on paper and in front of men who understood horses better than legal phrases. "She brought the mare under false pretenses," Silas said. Harmon shook his head. "That blaze is hers, saw it on the stage road when she came in." Penny screamed again, offended by delay. Pell pointed at Lute. "Untie the mare." This time Lute moved. Silas watched his order die in another man's hands. That was when the fear finally reached him. Pell pointed toward the clerk's office. Sit inside until I decide whether to lock my former clerk in his own room. Silas did not ride away. He did not walk out with his papers tucked safe in his coat. He crossed the courthouse yard without his seal, without the warrant book, without his cattle hands, without a Saz church cover, and without the story he had written for Elise Hart. People watched him go, but watching was not the punishment. What he had used was gone. That was the punishment. Pell turned to Elise. The old sheriff looked as if the day had aged him 10 years. "Miss Hart," he said, "I owe you." "No," Elise said. The word surprised even Jonah. Elise held up her hand. "You owe me the key." Pell stared. "I have been arrested 4 times, she said. "I would like to open the door once." Something like respect moved across Pell's face. He took the jail key from his ring and placed it in her palm. It was heavier than Elise expected. She walked to the cell with the whole yard following at a distance. Jonah did not walk ahead of her. He stayed beside her, still without a badge, still careful not to touch. At the cell, Elise fitted the key into the lock. Her hand shook. Jonah saw it. He did not take the key. He set 2 fingers lightly under her wrist, steadying, not guiding. "Yours," he said. She turned the key. The lock opened. The sound was small. It was also the loudest thing Elise had heard since stepping off the train. She opened the cell door and walked in. Then she walked out by her own feet. She hung the key on the wall hook above the empty space where the warrant book had been. Me stood in the doorway. "Elise," she said, "I am sorry." Elise looked at the brass root badge no longer on Me's coat. The cost was visible, not enough to erase the silence, but enough to begin telling the truth. "Then say it where women waiting at depots can hear," Elise said. Me nodded. "I will." Pell heard that too. He looked at Me's surrendered badge, then at the depot where women arrived with trunks, letters, and hopes folded too small. "1 route," he said gruffly, 30 days. Me's chin lifted. "I expected permanent." "Do not make me kinder than I am," Pell said. "You stayed silent while a false charge crossed my desk." "I did." 30 days, and a public notice that all female passengers may hold their own papers and water rights at the depot. Silas made a sound from near the clerk's office. Pell turned on him. "And the notice will say why." Me bowed her head once. "That is fair." It was not mercy without cost. It was not ruin without purpose. Elise could live with that. More importantly, the next woman might live because of it. Widow Crane finally brought Elise the coffee. It had gone cold hours ago. Elise drank it anyway. Penny was returned before sundown, dusty and offended, with her white blaze shining like a bent candle in the red light. Elise pressed her forehead to the mare's neck and breathed until the last of the jail smell left her. Jonah stood by the hitch rail with his hat in both hands. Pell had given him the badge back. Jonah had not pinned it on. Elise noticed. "You do not want it." "I want it clean before I wear it again." "Can a badge be clean?" "Maybe not." He looked toward the empty jail doorway. "But a hand can try." Elise smiled then, really smiled, and it changed his face before he could hide it. "Jonah Cross," she said, "what was the question you planned to ask one at a time?" His fingers tightened around the hat brim. "First question was whether you wanted the eastbound ticket." "No." "I hoped not." The honesty came out rough. "Second was whether I could call on you proper once this town knows your name without charges tied to it." "You may." He swallowed. "Third was for later." "How much later?" "Long enough that you never wonder if I asked, because you needed saving." Elise looked at the open cell, the key on the hook, the empty place where Silas's warrant book no longer lay, and Penny waiting behind her with travel dust on her mane. "Ask it now," she said. Jonah went very still. "Elise, I am not in the cell." "No." "I have my mare." "Yes." "I have a ticket if I want one." "Yes." "And you are not wearing the badge that arrested me." He looked down at the badge in his hand, then set it on the rail between them. "No." "Then ask." Jonah said, 3 days is not a lifetime, so hear this before you answer. If you say no, the mare, the ticket, the room, and your cleared name remain yours. Nothing I did today becomes a debt. He showed her the plain ring. I carried this until I could ask a woman without trying to own her. Elise's breath caught. He lowered himself to one knee in the dust outside the jail door. No one laughed. No one spoke. Elise saw me near the depot, already telling 2 women what had happened. She saw Pell watching from the courthouse steps with Silas's seal in his hand. She saw Isabel tearing the false church mark from the letter and dropping it into the stove ash. She saw Penny flick her ears as if impatient with all human ceremony. Then she saw only Jonah. "Will you marry me?" he asked. "Not to clear your name, not to pay a debt, not to give you shelter, but because you are Elise Hart, and I would be honored to build a life you can leave freely and still choose." Elise held out her hand. "Yes," she said, "but I will keep my own key." Jonah laughed, and the sound broke open the last hard thing in the yard. "I would expect nothing less." He slid the ring onto her finger. He did not kiss her in front of the town. He stood, took her hand, and waited. When she stepped toward him, he folded her fingers between both of his as if he had been trusted with something breakable and strong at once. Pell cleared his throat. "Deputy Cross." Jonah turned. Pell held up the badge. "When you are ready." Jonah looked at Elise. She looked at the badge, then at the key, then at the open cell. "Wear it," she said, "but remember what it felt like in your hand today." He pinned it on slowly. Not above his heart this time. Beside it. If this clean frontier romance stayed with you, subscribe for more Wild West stories where rejected brides, lonely cowboys, and brave women find home by choice. The eastbound train left without Elise. At sunset, she returned the jail key, stepped through the open cell doorway, and stepped back out because she could. The warrant hook behind her was empty. The ring on her hand was one she had been free to refuse, and Jonah stood beside the threshold without blocking her road. Elise chose his hand.